Lightforce in Lasermation. Better turn this off now. It's ChinnyVision, and today we are looking at Lightforce on original hardware. I mentioned the original hardware because in the week somebody was complaining about stuff on the Atari ST and that I was using an emulator, which I wasn't. So we use real hardware here, and this game is Lightforce by Faster Than Light, although you will know them better as Gargoyle Games. And in fact, it was basically a rebranded Gargoyle, and they put out Shockwave Rider, I think, and Hydrofall, and this under the Faster Than Light label. Game came about 24th, 25th, something like that, in the top 100 Spectrum games of all time, as voted for, well, not voted for, as selected by Stuart Campbell. Lightforce entering the asteroid belt, and off we go. It's a 48k game, and the first thing you'll be noticing here on the Spectrum, if you've got eagle eyes, there's no colour clash. Somehow the game works without causing any colour clash at all. And of course, colour clash is where, because the way the Spectrum works, in each 8x8 pixel block, there can only be two colours. So if you get a third colour introduced, then the foreground colour turns into the background colour, and so on. But no, this game was remarkable for the fact it had no colour clash in the game. Over to the Amstrad CPC, where there's certainly no colour clash, and we're in 16 colour mode. It's a shoot 'em up. It's a very basic shoot 'em up at that. There's no power-ups. There's extra lives for points and things. You have to shoot all the baddies. And, well, the main object actually is to destroy the bases, of which there are several pods. It's a bit like well, it's like, well, look at this. I mean, it's Personian, isn't it? Except it's vertically scrolling. You have to destroy all the pods on the base, although the enemies do home in on you, so if you're aiming, there you go. And that's one of the problems with Lightforce. When you respawn, another baddie will come straight for you. C64 version. And I am using an auto fire cheat here. And there's no sound effects, but you get this funky Rob Hubbard tune on the 64. And yeah, basically the aim of the game is to get right through to the end, just destroy all the pods on each of the bases and get the highest score possible. There are no power-ups available. What you start off at the beginning with is what you end the game with. It's lovely and fluid, perhaps overshadowed by, well, so many other games that came later, but at the time, looking rather good. I found the Spectrum version particularly hard. Very hard indeed, in fact, with the capture delay. I kept on dying. Basically, things would appear on the screen, and by the time I had a chance to avoid them, I was dead. Some of the reviewers remarked the balance of the gameplay is very fair, and on Specky, I found it very hard. Back on the Amstrad. It's nice scrolling for the CPC. It's nice scrolling on all the versions, to be fair. And it's good they didn't do a direct Specky port. I just saw a screenshot of this game back in the day, and I saw these orange levels and thought, but it's supposed to be a desert level, so I suppose you can get away with it. It's sand. I don't know what these things buzzing me are. They look like white helmets, possibly owned by the Stig, floating at me. Most objects take one shot to kill, but some of them take, well, two or more. Some of the asteroids that come at you, I assume they're asteroids around the bases. Basically shoot everything. Things can spawn behind you, and when they do, they pass through you without killing you, although that's apart from the times when they do kill you. Like there. See, I got shot there, but the enemies pass from behind me because blatantly that would be unfair if they killed me. Back to the Spectrum. Same level on the Spectrum Desert level. The yellow works rather better. And look how detailed these graphics are. It's because they've managed to do all the graphics in 8x8 blocks. And because they move so fast, you don't notice everything's moving at that kind of rate, if you see what I mean. I mean, the background's scrolling at not 8x8 blocks, but the enemies are all coming past 8x8 blocks, so they've just done some very clever stuff. Gives it a very different feel having the music during the game. It's interesting they went the sound effects route on the CPC and not the music route. It's very hard to destroy all the bits you need to on each base. One distraction mistake coming your way or needing to shoot something else, that's it, you won't manage to do it. Like most shoot 'em ups, the gameplay is quite repetitive, and yeah, it is here. It was lauded at the time, but there's so many other games that came later that when you come back to this you go, yeah, I would have thought it's good at the time, but it's not so much now. The main thing is the fact it looks so nice on the CPC and the Spectrum as well. And look at that scrolling on the CPC. It's lovely and smooth. It's not 50 frames a second like the C64, but it's good for the CPC. That's what the Lasermation thing is that Gargoyle/Faster Than Light said. Lasermation was this new way they had of making graphics move really quickly. I assume that they just meant on the Z80 versions because the C64 can do that in the hardware anyway. That said, if you look at the CPC version, the enemy sprites, when they're moving fast, you don't really notice it. But when there's a lot on the screen, they slow down. And for all the colour that in the game, look at these baddies here, basically the same colours as the background. It's all done very cleverly. It's all been worked out so you avoid colour clash. Because actually, you know what? There's not an awful lot of colour in this game. The trick is how they've got it to work and how you don't notice any kind of residual colour clash when it's there. It's all a trick of hardware and trick of the eye as well. Whereas games like Turrican 2 are very colourful. One of the most colourful games on the Spectrum, and Turtles as well. Actually thinking about games randomly off the top of my head, but they of course do have colour clash. It is a remarkable feat. I mean, there's no getting away from it, although I do question that it came so high in the Or Sinclair Top 100. It feels a very primitive shoot 'em up. I mean, okay, it's vertical, but when you play games like R-Type, for example, this feels rather unforgiving, hard, and not a lot of variety. But then again, it's early days. The Spectrum, what's it, 1986? Off the top of my head, possibly 7. And I do research for this stuff. I don't do this off the top of my head, honest. And it's early days, and you see, we take so much for granted with shoot 'em ups today as well, that what we expect from them and how they evolved. But this was one of the first decent ones available, so it's really important. And of course, it got parodied. So it's such an important game, it got parodied by Binary Design / the Pickford Brothers, because the built-in game, or the hidden game in Zub, is of course called Lightforce, where they don't do graphics like this, but Steve Pickford had a good go at doing some graphics that looked kind of almost polygonal, made of polygons. They looked kind of 3D. They were quite clever, and just in this little game that they knocked up over a weekend that played pretty well. Lightforce, a really important game in the evolution of the Spectrum, and looked rather good on the Amstrad as well. On the Specky, it's really colourful, and I must stress how important this game was for showing that colour clash did not need to plague Specky games. Unfortunately, it's surpassed by so many other games in terms of gameplay, and it becomes rather repetitive, and with the capture lag, pretty much impossible, actually. If you play it on a CRT, it's far easier, but still a little bit boring once you're really into it and you've been playing it for 15 minutes. You think, what else am I going to see here? And the answer is nothing. There's no end of level baddies or anything like that. On the Amstrad, very colourful, but again quickly surpassed. And on the C64, well, there's a cracking tune on it, but again, that kind of game is 10 a penny on the 64. It plays well, but there's so much other stuff you can play. In the 80s, an iconic game, but in 2020 don't expect to get the same amount as the reviewers back in the day did.